Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Planning Applications Committee meeting on the 6th of February 2024. I'll start with item 1, which is the Chair's welcome and the evacuation procedure. As I see a lot of new faces, I will go through that in full. So I ask that you ensure that you're all signed in on the sign-in sheet provided. These will be used in case of an evacuation. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the buildings, please gather outside the Lloyds Bank building on the opposite side of the road. Exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. This meeting is being recorded for future publication on the Council's website. Please kindly ask that you turn your mobile phones off, or at the very least ensure that it's turned to silent for the duration of the meeting. Item 2, apologies. Right, so I do have a number of apologies here this evening. So I've got apologies from Councillor Cape, Councillor Hammersley, Councillor Markham, who is being substituted for by Councillor Brown. So thank you, Councillor Brown. I've got apologies from Councillor Panday. Councillor Shepherd. I don't know if I've got here that Councillor Watkins might be attending. Has anyone heard from him? Okay, so if he does, he does. If he doesn't, he doesn't. And then apologies from Councillor Wilson, who's being substituted for by Councillor Walsh. So again, thank you, Councillor Walsh, for stepping in. Okay, next item then is the minutes. So the minutes are from the previous meeting on the 16th of January 2024. Are councillors and members of the committee happy for me to sign those off as a true and accurate reflection of the meeting? Okay, I'm seeing no dissent, so I will sign those minutes off. Item number 4, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest that are not included on the schedule? Councillor Shires.
It's more of a declaration of contact. Do you want me to just do that now? Yeah. Okay, so item 3, Dr. Sharma, I am aware of the situation, although I'm never given any indication of any way that I'd vote or anything for it.
Any other members? No, so I'm not seeing any other declarations of interest. Any other declarations of contact, which is agenda item number 5. Again, not seeing any indication there. We do have a number of speakers this evening, so we will call them at the appropriate times. Once each item has been heard, the appropriate speakers will be given their time to speak. So we're going to move on then to our first application of the evening, so I'll hand over to Claire.
This application is for the variation of Condition 2 of Planning Permission 38702 to amend the size, shape, height and material approach of the building, amendment to the facilities within the building, amendment to the layout of the car parking area, including a reduction in spaces, and amendment to the landscaping strategy. Variations of Conditions 3, 4, 7, 11 and 14 are also proposed to ensure the development is carried out in accordance with the updated submitted documents. The previous planning permission was approved in July 2022 and included a new 2-storey building arranged in an L shape that included a swimming pool, sports hall, cycle hub, cafe and changing facilities on the ground floor, and studio space, free weights area, fitness suite and more changing rooms on the first floor. This amended application proposes changes to the appearance, layout and landscaping of the scheme, but the operational side of the development would not be that different in terms of scale and nature. The amendment consists of a reduction in the size of the building, approximately 1,100 square metres. The layout of the building has been amended to change from an L shape to a more of a rectangular form, and the building has been amended to vary in height, and the massing has been redesigned to include 3 different sections, including a material block, top shot block and ribbon block. The material approach has changed so that each block comprises a different material treatment. The facilities within the building have been amended following the reduction in size, including at ground floor, the loss of the multi-purpose room, reduction in size of the learner pool and removal of the cycle hub. At first floor level, the number of studios has been reduced to 1 and the admin area and consultation room have been removed. The usable space at first floor has also been reduced. Amendments to the landscape are also proposed, including the location and number of key vistas and movement strategy and into the landscape areas have been reduced in number. The layout of the car parking area is proposed to be amended with a change in the number of spaces from 158 to 142 and a minor decrease in electric vehicle spaces from 16 to 14. There is also a reduction in the number of cycle parking spaces from 34 to 20 and inclusion of spaces for adaptive bikes. The application is being reported to committee as it is a major application involving council-owned land and the council itself is the applicant. The principle of development of the site has been accepted through the approval of the previous application. This proposal seeks to erect a new physical activity hub that will offer an enhanced range and quality of services and facilities to the local community. It is considered that the amended scheme still offers a greater and improved range of services than the existing leisure centre does. The existing centre would remain open whilst a new facility is being built, ensuring continuity of the provision of services. Sport England have commented on this application and that the revised indoor sports facility mix would still help to meet the current and future needs identified within the council's strategic evidence. Similarly, the 3D pitch, as proposed last time, is to be retained alongside the skate park and learn to ride hoop. They consider the revised scheme would still result in a benefit to sport, which would outweigh the detriment caused by the on the impact on the playing field. The Sports Development team have stated that the provision of the activity hub will address some of these actions in the sports, recreation and community facility strategy and will offer more opportunities for residents of the borough and the surrounding area to improve their health. The Parks team strongly welcome and support the application's overall intent to renew and add to the leisure and recreational provision in Bedworth. In terms of visual amenity, the revised scheme still involves the loss of some trees alongside some open land due to the siting of the 9x9 pitch. However, there would still be significant benefits offered through the renewal of parkland trees in a manner that would strengthen the use and character of the park by introducing new habitats that increase species diversity alongside structure and visual interest. The replacement of the poorly drained football pitch with the oval lawn remains a significant benefit with regard to visual amenity. As I've mentioned previously, the amendments consist of a reduction in the size of the building and the layout of the building has been amended to go from a more of an L shape, which is shown on the left-hand side, to a more of a rectangular form. The approved building, as shown on the left, was split into two separate sections for massing purposes, including a workshop block and material block. Whilst largely arranged over a single height, the middle section stood marginally shorter than the outer sections. The material treatment of each section differed to add variety. The building in the amended scheme varied in height across three separate sections. The material treatment has been amended to include black smooth brick, cladding and dark aluminium frame glazing to the pool hall on the material block. The top shot block comprises bespoke light grey smooth brick, cladding and black frame glazing. The ribbon block includes buff brick and aluminium cladding to the upper level, including red, brown and orange colours in an arranged pattern. This element picks up on the history of the weaving industry that was predominant in Bedworth in the 18th and 19th centuries. The approved building is 30 metres to the top of the parapet and the revised scheme measures approximately 11.5 at the maximum height and reduces to 10.5 and 8 metres. It is considered that the amended design is acceptable and the reduction in height and size would help the building sit more sensitively within the overall park setting. In relation to residential amenity, Environmental Health have commented that the overall impact of noise has not changed from the original assessments, and therefore their comments and recommendations remain the same. Condition 20 on the agenda restricts external plant, and if some is necessary, details would need to be acoustically treated. Condition 15 requires an acoustic barrier to the northwest boundary of the all-weather pitch, and condition 21 limits the hours of operation of the pitch to between the hours of 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. In order to control noise outbreak from the gym studio, condition 22 requires that all doors and windows to this area should be kept closed when amplified sound systems are used. The nearest residential properties are located along Coventry Road with a minimum separation distance of approximately 56 metres, which complies with distance standards. The position of the building has been amended very slightly, but the western elevation is located in the same place as the approved scheme. As a result, the new building would be located no closer to the neighbouring occupiers than originally proposed. Turning to highway safety, as with the approved scheme, it is proposed to utilise the existing signal-controlled access onto Coventry Road. County Highways have stated that the proposed development would be smaller than the approved scheme and therefore shall have less impact on the capacity of the public highway network. As part of the previous application, Highways requested a contribution of £1,500 to enable the validation of the existing traffic signal junction at Coventry Road and Park Road. They've also requested this contribution as part of this application. In terms of parking, the approved scheme provided 158 spaces, which was considered acceptable given the location of the site. The proposed spaces, excuse me, the revised scheme proposes 142 spaces, which takes into account the reduction in floor space. As with the approved scheme, this is considered to be acceptable, taking into account the very sustainable location of the site. As members will note, the agenda contains an objection from Highways. This is in regard to the siting of the bin collection area and bike storage area, and also raises questions regarding the submitted travel plan and active travel, such as footway and cycleway connections. Highways considered that these issues are resolvable, and on that basis, the applicant has worked to get the objection removed in advance of committee. Further information and amendments have been submitted. In terms of the bin store, the position is in response to the leisure centre's requirements, which necessitate this to be within an appropriate distance of the main entrance. However, notwithstanding this, the refuse strategy for the site has been reconsidered in light of these concerns. It is proposed that a managed strategy will now be adopted by the leisure centre, which does not require a refuse vehicle to reverse or travel up this servicing route, and therefore subsequently won't conflict with pedestrian movements. All refuse collections will occur within the main car park circulation roadway adjacent to the bin store, with bins pulled to the edge of the car park for collection on the designated day. A sweat path analysis has been submitted to demonstrate that there is sufficient space for cars to pass a refuse vehicle during the brief loading period, and given the short nature of refuse collections, no significant disruption within the car park is expected. To reinforce this managed approach and discourage the manoeuvring of large vehicles in the servicing area, the curb radii has been removed and the junction realigned accordingly. Amendments have been made to improve the turning area available for large vehicles to pass the coach bays without conflict. The sweat path analysis demonstrates a refuse vehicle travelling through the site with two coaches parked in their designated spaces, and shows how that would work without any conflicts. The amendments also bring the cycle store to the front of the bin store and in line with the building frontage, which improves natural surveillance and visibility. The additional information that has been submitted states that the primary cycle routes through the development site are the designated green spine and the oval within the west of the site. These offer connectivity with existing routes within the wider park, which do not form part of this current development area. These proposed routes within the site offer a minimum of 3.1 metres width around the oval, with the north-south connection measuring a width of 3.6 metres. The existing access point at Coventry Road offers acceptable opportunities for the necessary vehicle traffic and pedestrians to access the site. Highways have been consulted on these amendments and extra information, and they have now confirmed that the amendments have overcome their previous concerns and therefore have no objection, subject to conditions as detailed on the addendum. In relation to flood risk and drainage, the site is within flood zone 1 and therefore has a low level of fluvial flood risk. There are conditions relating to drainage on the previous approval which have been added to this application. The County Flood Risk Team have no objection to this application, subject to the imposition of those conditions. In terms of contamination, a site assessment was submitted with the previous application and has been updated in line with the amended scheme. This assessment includes the same recommendations as with the original document, and no additional contamination impact was identified. Environmental Health originally requested the imposition of standard contaminated land conditions and again have been added on this application as condition 5. An updated air quality assessment has been submitted with the current application. Both the Transport Demand Matters SPD and Air Quality SPD require the provision of electric vehicle charging points. The provision meets these requirements in these documents. With regards to ecology and biodiversity, an ecology report has been submitted with this application. An ecological walkover survey took place in November last year to understand the updated position of the site following approval of the previous application. This identified that all habitats present on the site have remained the same as recorded. A pre-works badger survey was completed as part of this walkover survey, which demonstrated that no sets or evidence of badgers were found. A bat survey was submitted with the original application, which demonstrated that the demolition of the existing leisure centre would not be anticipated to result in any impact on roosting bats. The survey is valid for a period of 2 years, and therefore, given the time elapsed between obtaining permission and this application, the survey would have expired. It is noted, however, that there have been no substantial changes to the existing leisure centre building, and the results of the original survey will still apply given the nature of this application. Being outside of the survey season and on the basis of the findings of the original survey, it is considered that further surveys be required. These can be secured by condition and are included as condition 28. In order to comply with the MPPF to ensure development does not have an negative impact on biodiversity, the necessary calculations have been carried out. These show a no net loss in biodiversity. As a result, the Parks team have no objection subject to conditions. The previous application resulted in loss of Category B trees. The majority of trees proposed to be removed in the previous application are also proposed to be removed as part of this scheme. An arboricultural impact assessment has also been submitted. This once again identifies the number and category of trees on the site. The report demonstrates that 23 individual trees and 8 groups of trees will need to be removed for the scheme. 3 individual trees that are identified for removal are considered to be unsuitable for retention, and therefore the removal of these trees is considered acceptable. 2 trees being removed are of high retention value and 16 are of moderate value. The remaining 2 individual trees and 5 groups are considered to be of low retention value. Whilst this loss is unfortunate, loss of trees can be mitigated by a new planting scheme. An amended arboricultural method statement has been submitted to take into account the tree officer's comments. And the tree officer has commented that a sufficient number of trees are proposed in mitigation and that are covered under condition 13. This gives later control on the size and species selection and to ensure a beneficial long-term effect on the structural treescape of the park, despite the initial unavoidable impacts. In terms of obligations, as I've mentioned earlier, County Highways have requested £1,500 to the validation of the existing signals, and that's the only request that we've received. The recommendation is approval, subject to the completion of a legal agreement and the conditions as detailed on the agenda and addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Claire. I have one speaker on this item, and that's Councillor Markham, who I believe you're speaking in capacity as Ward Councillor. Yeah, when you're ready, Councillor.
Being the ward member and the portfolio holder under which this project sits, I am, as you would expect, speaking in favour of this application. This is a much needed facility within Bedworth and the Borough, and the current leisure centre is old, tired and in need of some TLC. This will continue to be in use until the new facility is open, so there will be no loss of leisure facility while this is being built. There will be some disruption to users of the park, but this is going to be kept to a minimum. We've liaised with the organisers of the park run, and I'm happy to say that this will continue within the park while the work is ongoing. As you all know, the building of the new facility was paused due to the inflation costs out of the council's control, and construction would have been well underway if this hadn't occurred. During this time, everyone involved in this project at Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, Sports England and DLUC have been working extremely hard to bring this to its current position. And as can be seen, the reason this has come back to Planning Committee is because since the last approval, there's been some changes to the shape and design of the two-storey building. Although it still has an 8-lane, 25-metre pool, together with the teaching learning pool, fitness suite and fitness studio, together with a cafe, a multi-use sports hall and all the changing facilities you would expect. Outside there will be a 9x9 all-weather football pitch and the new skate park will be installed. So I ask that you support and approve this application tonight, and if it is approved, the enabling works within the Miners Welfare Park will begin very soon. Thank you.
Any further, does anyone have any points of clarification they'd like to ask Councillor Markham on anything she said? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone indicating. So in that case, we have in front of us a recommendation to grant planning permission subject to the legal agreement and the conditions as printed. Do I have a proposer? Okay, Councillor Brown, and a seconder, Councillor Hartshorn. Okay, so I'll open the floor now for any debate or any point by any members. Do I have any members? Councillor Walsh.
As a Bedworth councillor, I'm very pleased that we've got to this stage with regards to the activity hub. Unfortunately, as Councillor Markham stated, it had been on a pause because of the costing factors exceeded the potential budget that we had available. So from that point of view, it's a wonderful situation that we are at this point in time now. We know full well that had it not been for our administration, this would have been a pie-in-the-sky pipe dream. But we've got it to this point. Councillor Markham's previous portfolio holder, Councillor Evans, managed to secure funding from the Levelling Up Fund, which has obviously given us a position whereby we can get to this point. So I will be supporting this application fully. Thank you.
Councillor Hartshorn.
For the car park and the sweat path analysis, I don't know whether it's the angle that I'm sat at. Is that illustration of the car park accurate to scale, as the width of the vehicle does seem to be varying quite a bit as it's going round the car park? I don't know if that's just me or if it's a scaling issue or...
Yeah, I mean, the plans they've submitted have to be to scale for us to accept them. And this particular plan has been scrutinised by Highways and they are satisfied that that sweat path works.
Any further questions, Councillor Hartman?
You know, obviously, it's great that it's come back. Sad circumstances, it has had to be reduced in size, but it is an attractive-looking building nonetheless, and you know, I will be supporting it. I just had to ask that question about the sweat path analysis, just to settle my own mind.
Just to settle your mind on that, obviously, in terms of showing it on the screen, it won't necessarily be to scale, but in terms of what the Highways Authority have seen, they're happy that it meets the requirements.
Okay, I've got two more speakers indicating, so I'll go to the first of those. Councillor Brown.
As a Bedworth councillor, I'm so pleased to see this application come back to this committee and not be lost at all. I think when the original proposal was put forward and the funding that was obtained for it, none of us expected a war in Ukraine to inflate material costs worldwide and to generate inflation. And so we have come back with a more modest proposal, if you like, but one that captures all of the essential elements of the original and perhaps strips out some of the nice to have but not essential aspects of it. I absolutely welcome this. I think it's a testament to the hard work of everybody involved that we've managed to rejig this and bring back something that is still a very exciting development for Bedworth. And I think, like probably all the Bedworth councillors, we could declare a notional interest in that at some point we've been inside the existing building. We just want to see this go ahead and let's get it going, please, because it's something that the town needs, as much loved as the existing one is. But it has come, or is coming to the end of its useful life. So I absolutely welcome this and look forward to seeing it going ahead. Thank you.
I mean, it's worth noting that the way it's designed, it's not one big building, which I think is what the original plan was, but several smaller buildings now. And hopefully there is room there should money become available in the future and should expansion be deemed necessary, that we could actually expand on that. So hopefully that's not the end of it. We might see another phase later on.
Note, and purely subjectively, I think this is a more aesthetically pleasing elevation than the original. So, but then beauty is in the eye of the beholder, I guess.
So that is something. Councillor Walsh.
Just regarding the car park, is it a one-way directional car park or is it a two-way? Because it's not very obviously visible, or you can't really see it on those particular slides. But also, I'm wondering why, when you look at any type of car park that is commonplace in the UK, where all the parking slots are square at right angles to the roadway, why don't we adopt the easier method that the Americans tend to use, and herringbone, making it a lot easier to enter and exit those slots? It's just a thought. But first thing, is it a one-way system?
Planning on the screen does appear to show that it is a one-way layout.
Okay, Councillor Pandey.
I fully support this scheme because it was already taking quite a long time. Otherwise, we have to pass this one so that the inflation again gone up, so that we don't want to stop it. As soon as possible, we would like to start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Share in the appreciation of my Bedworth fellow members, and of course although being from Nuneaton, I go regularly to the existing facility with my son, who basically I taught to swim there, and now is far better at swimming than I'll ever be. Also the delight that the skate park will be opening again, a fantastic thing that Bedworth should be very proud of. So I'll be delighted to support this, not just for the people of Bedworth, for the people of the whole borough.
I've got a couple of questions of my own just to clarify. First of all, electric vehicle charging points. has that changed from the original, the numbers that we've got?
Yeah, because the number of car parking spaces is reduced as a result of the reduction in the floor space, that has a knock-on effect in terms of the electric vehicle charging points, but it all complies with our required standards.
Right, fine. The second thing was to do with the parking space. I heard you quote a couple of figures. I think one was 158 and one was it 146? I was just kind of got... So when you talk about parking spaces...
Yeah, let me just refresh my memory. Yeah, the approved scheme has 158 spaces. This scheme has 142.
Right, okay, 140. And do you know how that compares to what there is in existence there at the moment? Is it more or less?
I don't know, but the applicant's team might be able to answer that question. It's more now, there's existing space to more than...
Lovely. Thank you very much for that clarification. It's much appreciated. Okay, I'm not seeing any other speakers indicating. So in that case, we'll go straight to the vote. So all those in favour of granting planning permission, subject to the agreements? Yeah, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll now have, I think, a minute just to change over our speakers. So we'll just thank you very much, Claire. And, are you up next up, are you, Jasmine? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the development of 5 townhouses, including new access road to the land rear of 9 to 15 Park Avenue. The key issues with this application are the principle of residential development, the impact on residential amenity, the impact on visual amenity, impact on highway safety, flooding and drainage, and the impact on protected trees, biodiversity and ecology. The application site is an undeveloped piece of land within the settlement boundary of Nuneaton. It has no specific designation within the adopted borough plan. The development of 5 dwellings would be considered as a windfall site within the plan, and the site itself is located within a sustainable location which is well connected to local services and facilities. It is considered that the principle of development is acceptable. The proposed dwellings would be in accordance with the Sustainable Design and Construction SPD in terms of meeting distance standards between the proposed dwellings and existing dwellings on both Park Avenue and Trinity Walk. In terms of the proposed dwellings themselves, they will meet the minimum internal space standards and also have access to a private outdoor amenity space. In order to prevent oppressive extensions, permitted development rights for extensions and outbuildings are proposed to be removed via condition to protect the amenity of future occupiers. In terms of noise, the application has been submitted with a noise survey which stated that the dominant noise sources are road traffic noise, the Holman Way Industrial Estate and the Attleborough Arms Public House. The Environmental Health Officer has reviewed the findings of the noise assessment and submitted a response of no objection, subject to a condition for a noise attenuation scheme to be submitted, including details of glazing and ventilation in order to protect the amenity of future occupiers. On balance, the scheme is considered to be acceptable in terms of the impact on residential amenity, subject to conditions. The proposed development will create a total of 5 dwellings formed of a pair of semi-detached dwellings and 3 terraced properties. The dwellings are to be 3-storey in height, with front and rear dormers to form rooms within the roof space to create townhouses proposed for residential accommodation. A car parking area is proposed at the front of the site, formed of a total of 11 spaces. And the site is to be accessed via a private driveway from Park Avenue, located between 9 Park Avenue and Holman Way Industrial Estate. The mixed nature of development in the locality, which is formed of industrial units and residential properties, results in there being no strict design or build line. The development site is located to the rear of the current building line on Park Avenue. However, as discussed, this is not a strict build line, and it is also considered that the proposed group would create their own cohesive group of dwellings, which would not be considered as harmful to the street scene. The development site is proposed to be accessed via a new private driveway access located off Park Avenue in the form of a dropped curb crossover. As a new access is being created, a road safety audit has been submitted and reviewed by the Highway Authority. Swept path analysis plans have also been submitted for review to show a refuse collection vehicle, delivery vehicle and fire tender could enter the site and turn around within it in order to re-enter the highway in a forward gear. The Highway Authority submitted a response of no objection, subject to conditions. A car parking area is proposed to the front of the dwellings, which will be made up of a total of 11 spaces. 10 parking spaces will be allocated at a rate of 2 per dwelling, plus 1 visitor car parking space. This is in accordance with the parking standards SPD. The submitted plans also show a bike store to the front of the site, although limited details have been submitted in relation to this. As such, a suitable condition has been included for further details to be submitted, including the number and type of cycle stands and how the stands will be made safe and secure. On balance, the impact on highway safety is considered to be acceptable, subject to conditions. As per the Environment Agency's fluvial flooding maps, the site is wholly located within Flood Zone 1, which is a site with low probability of flooding from rivers. The site also has a very low chance of flooding from surface water. In terms of disposal of surface water, it has been indicated that this will be disposed via a sustainable drainage system and main sewer. Foul sewage is proposed to be disposed via main sewer and package treatment plant. A response from Severn Trent Water states that as per the PPG, the disposal of surface water by means of a soakaway should be considered as the primary method. A condition has been included for further details in relation to surface water and foul sewage to be submitted following the hierarchy within the PPG. Subject to these details, it's considered that there will not be an unacceptable impact on flooding or drainage as a result of this development. The site is covered by 2 tree preservation orders. As per this plan, TPO 280 covers 13 trees in total. Trees T12 and T13, which were close to the site, have been removed under a separate application, and 2 replacement trees have been planted. Again, on screen now you can see the replacement trees. These are located adjacent to the proposed access road. The replacement trees are not covered by the tree preservation order, however. Tree T11 is located close to the development site, but is ultimately outside of it within the adjacent industrial estate. TPO 998 covers 1 common lime tree. This tree is located within the site itself, and the car parking area, associated turning space and access road will surround it. 4 other groups of unprotected trees are located within or adjacent to the site, some of which may be required to be removed or pruned due to their position in relation to the proposed dwellings. A condition has been included on the decision notice for further details to be provided in relation to the proposed pruning or facilitation works to any trees within the site to ensure that only those that need to be pruned or removed are done so. An arboricultural impact assessment and arboricultural method statement have been submitted in relation to the trees on this site, although the assessment is mainly centred around T1, as this is the protected tree which will be most affected by the development. The details of the assessment and statement have been reviewed by the Council's tree officer. The details within the submitted documents confirms that barriers which are proposed around T1 and the 2 replacement trees during construction works Construction works for new areas of hard standing will utilise a cellular confinement system and no dig method with supervision during works by a project arborist. It is not anticipated that these works will have a detrimental effect on the tree, although the council's tree officer did raise concerns that there may be ongoing pressures from the proposed development in relation to tree T1, such as regular pruning for access for high-sided vehicles, and that the tree will likely drop sap. The impact of the proposal on trees has been weighed against the council's need for the residential dwellings, as well as other matters, and it was ultimately considered that, as it has been clearly demonstrated that the tree can be maintained as part of the development without being detrimentally impacted by it, this would not be considered a sufficient reason for refusal. On balance, subject to conditions, the proposal is found to be acceptable in terms of the impact on protected trees, ecology and biodiversity. To conclude, the potential impacts of the proposed development in relation to the principal, residential amenity, visual amenity, highway safety, flooding and drainage and trees have all been considered. In assessing the proposal, it has been shown that in the main, the proposal is in accordance with policy, and where there are potential adverse impacts which have been identified, it is possible to mitigate against these through these suggested conditions. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the schedule of conditions as printed on the agenda and the addendum, and subject to there being no new points of objection following the consultation period. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I have one speaker on this, and that's Mr. Starkey.
My name's Ashley. I represent the applicant, who is my dad. I just want to reiterate our position on this, our family development project. We have worked closely with the planning officers now over the last 12 months to ensure any comments or issues that have been raised have been addressed and resolved. This also included 6 months beforehand working on a pre-application submission where we received their advice with a positive and constructive direction. I would like to reiterate that this is a non-commercial residential project and it is very much family-based, involving my dad, my brother, my uncle and myself. In fact, my dad lives in a property which backs onto the site and who is, therefore, a local resident, who will want to make this as considered a building project as possible. We are looking to bring a derelict brownfield site into a residential area, back into residential use, and help to improve the local environment. We've been looking to do this in the right way, especially by retaining the existing mature TPO tree on the site. We had no intention of submitting an application for it to be removed. In fact, we have used this tree as a focal point and as a positive design generator for the development, with the site layout arranged around the tree, which we intend to retain and protect. We would like to give confidence and show that we will endeavour to be as considerate as possible during the construction stages. It would be a family-based build project. We would strictly adhere to any planning conditions included and be guided by professional consultants who would be retained throughout the project and ensure that we are fully compliant. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Clarification I would like to ask of Mr. Starkey. Yeah, Councillor Green.
Okay, so have you got any background or history in this sort of work previously?
He is a builder. My brother, by trade, has his own landscaping company as well, so that's why it's a family-based project.
Katie, Councillor Walsh.
Sorry, clarification, if I may. The previous application that was refused back in 1998, was that an application made by the same family member or family group? You've mentioned obviously about access via Park Avenue along a private road, and obviously it states within the presentation there is sufficient turning circle for refuge. Okay, fair enough.
It's more if there's anything the speaker had said.
Apologies, Chair.
On that, so we can delve into that in a few moments. Okay, I don't want to put Mr. Starkey too much on the spot. So with that in mind, then I'm not seeing any other hands. So what I'll do is I'll ask for a proposer to recommend. So we have a recommendation to recommend and grant planning permission. So do I have a proposer? So Councillor Green and Councillor Smith to second. Thank you. So I'll open the floor then to any members. Councillor Hartshorn.
Slight concern about access. I know highways are given their approval for it. If you glance at page 46 on the agenda, It states, it assumes that a vehicle will not park immediately to the left of the development access when exiting the junction. A vehicle parked immediately to the left access of the junction may result in larger vehicles overrun footway areas or striking other parked vehicles in order to carry out their turning manoeuvres to access egress of the site. As a driver of similar large vehicles and being a regular user of Park Avenue, the access round there is not great, even at quiet times. And I am very concerned that access will not be maintained, not by the applicants, but by other people parking in the street. I would feel better if there was a condition where we could put maybe some double yellow lines across that stretch of the road to ensure that there is more of a deterrent for people to keep out the way, to ensure that access can be maintained. But other than that, I do think it's a very attractive development, and it's good that they managed to keep the TPOs, trees, in place.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Harsel. We're just having a debate about what you said regarding the yellow lines and where we stand. So, yeah, Jasmine will give us an update on that.
Yeah, no problem. If you then carry on to page 47, the top paragraph there, there is a comment there about H-bar markings to go onto Park Avenue. This would be something that would be between the applicant and the Highway Authority and would be agreed as part of a Section 184 process. So it is separate to planning legislation, but there has already been sort of some discussions had as part of, I believe it was the road safety audit raised that.
Okay, thank you. Have you got any follow-up questions, Councillor Hartshorn? No? Okay, I had to think about that one for a moment there. I'll go to my next speaker, Councillor Walsh, and then Councillor Brown.
I've got concerns likewise with regards to access to the site. One, the width of the driveway. It states quite clearly there is plenty of turning circle within the compound area, the building area. But given the length of that particular driveway past those the houses that are currently there, is it wide enough for two-way access? Or will it cause a problem in terms of vehicles, vans, deliveries, etc., in passing terms? Also, you mentioned, obviously, Councillor Hartshorn mentioned about yellow lines, and obviously you've got a point in here about the H-bar on Park Avenue. But as far as I'm aware, the H-bar marking is not legally binding from the point of view of, we've had this number of times where residents, not in this instance obviously, residents have had H-bar markings in front of their property, and when other people have parked there, the police have said, well, we can do nothing about it because it's not a legally binding marking situation. So that would give me concern from that point of view. Obviously, the access up and down that driveway for 5 properties will be quite a lot of traffic, where at the moment in time there is no traffic, obviously. So that was that on that side of it. I've got another question, but would you like to answer that point first?
Obviously, as you'll be aware, Councillor, this has been subject to consultation with the Highways Authority. Obviously, they are the experts in this field and they have looked at all the widths and the amount of traffic that 5 houses are likely to generate. So they are happy that it is not going to produce any problem. Obviously, we've talked about the markings. That isn't something that we can look at within planning legislation. It is separate legislation, but as Jasmine has indicated, there are discussions about that going on, so I probably can't add any more to that, unfortunately.
Looking at the site plans, I haven't seen anything regarding electric vehicle charging points or solar panels on the properties. Is that part of, if it could be clarified?
There are markings for electric vehicle charging points, and just to cover ourselves, we've also got a condition for there to be electric vehicle charging points at the standard rate, which I believe is 1 per 10 parking spaces. There aren't any solar panels. That we don't have a policy requirement for solar panels.
Obviously, because it backs onto industrial development, is the applicant looking to, or can we put conditions in to create sufficient privacy, soundproofing, fencing or border along that aspect of the property lines? Again, it might well be there and I haven't noticed it.
But there is one from Environmental Health in terms of the ventilation and glazing details for like inside the dwellings themselves, and details will be to condition 12, Maria tells me, and details to be submitted in terms of boundary treatments at a later date as part of a discharge condition. So we don't have those details right now, but we will have them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Quick observation to begin with, that looking at this development, I'm pleased that we're intending to condition the removal of permitted development rights given the size of the rear gardens at the property, and I'm taking it that's condition 22. Am I right? I notice on page 40 we say that we did get a comment from the Warwickshire Fire Authority, but it's not expanded upon. Can I take it there was no objection from them in their comment?
Informative note about there not to be any gates or there to be certain widths for the access, which I believe it is in accordance with.
Thank you. Have any other speakers? Councillor Shires.
I'm looking at the plans. I just can't see regarding access to the back gardens and wondering where bins are going to be kept. They're quite a bane in my life sometimes, so it would be good to know.
Plans are quite small on here, but there are, so for the semi-detached, there's side accesses, and the same for the terraces, but the sort of middle terrace will sort of share one of the side accesses and will still have access, so they all have access to the rears.
Okay, thank you. Do any other members have any questions? No, I'm not seeing anyone indicating. Oh, Councillor Green, sorry.
I really quite like this. It's a development of a brownfield site with giving work to local people and fulfilling a much needed demand in the borough. So I'm really quite supportive of it, bearing in mind that Highways have looked at this and have approved it. So that's all I want to say. Thank you, Chair.
So we'll move to the vote. So we have a recommendation to grant planning permission subject to conditions as printed and subject to there being no new points of objection following the additional consultation letters. So all those in favour? Okay, so that is carried unanimously. Thank you. So we'll move on to our third item. Philip, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. This is item 3, 039848 at 208 Lutterworth Road. This is a retrospective application for the remodelling of the dwelling to include an increase in scale to a 2-storey dwelling with ground floor extensions to the side and rear, as well as a first floor extension and gabled roof, erection of a replacement foot boundary wall, erection of a raised deck into rear. Background of this application is outlined in the background section of the agenda point. Just to inform you all that the Nuneaton Borough Council are planning enforcement, building control, environmental health, and the health and safety team and the emergency services have all been involved at some point during this planning application. This application is reported to committee at the request of Councillor Guttridge, and it does breach the threshold of objections required for this type of application. The key issues that will be addressed within this application are the impact on residential and visual amenity and the impact on highway safety. The first key issue to assess is the impact on the residential amenity. As per section 11 of the SPD, all distance standards from all elements of the proposal to neighbouring residential properties have been met and are acceptable. Furthermore, no 45 or 60 degree lines are breached, and so no original habitable windows will be significantly impacted by the proposal. The raised decking to the rear does present a potential issue with potential overlooking into the neighbouring garden of 210. However, a suitably worded condition has been added to the decision notice in order to protect the residential amenity of this property. There are also 2 first-floor windows proposed in the plans, and these have been conditioned suitably, again, to protect the neighbour's residential amenity. Overall, it is considered that subject to the conditions, the impact on the residential amenity is acceptable. The second key issue is the impact on visual amenity. The plan on the screen and the photo on the far side shows the proposed dwelling, with some of the alterations being built in the photo and all the alterations on the side. The middle photo shows the structure of the original bungalow, and at the start of this application. The proposal is to convert the bungalow to this 2-storey dwelling, which is going to significantly alter the existing dwelling. It is adding a 2-storey property where a bungalow once was, and a gable roof where a hip roof once was. However, due to the difference in styles, types and sizes of properties on Lutterworth Road, it will not have a significant detrimental impact on the visual amenity, as it will not create a prominent or incongruent feature within the street scene. Therefore, it can be concluded that the proposal at 208 Lutterworth Road does not have a detrimental impact on the visual amenity of the area. The third key issue is to assess the impact the proposal has on highway safety. After numerous rounds of discussion and consultation with the Highways Authority, they did respond that they had no objections subject to certain conditions being added to the decision notice. The main objections surrounded the wall that you see in the photo, which was at the time, but as you can see from the photo on the right there, has been changed in line with the plans. The main objections surrounded the wall that was shown, which was in the photo, as the access was proposed to be from the side and off the private road and Lutterworth Road. To remove the objection, the access, as you can see from the plan, is now in the middle and is acceptable to Highway Authority subject to the conditions, and thus the impact on highway safety is acceptable. Just to make you aware, there are 3 items on the agenda for the addendum for this addendum item. The first two are minor, as an address was missed off the address list, but was consulted throughout, and the number of objections was miscounted. However, the third one relates to a query that the planning department received last week regarding a new opening on the ground floor of the property. After consulting with the agent applicant, the amended plans were submitted displaying this opening and thus have been added to the scheduled condition. These plans do not change the design or significantly, or do not change significant elevation or design changes, and it only shows the opening as the difference. Design is the same since the last round of consultation. The recommendation for the committee is to approve the application subject to the conditions printed on the agenda. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Philip. So I've got several speakers on this. I've got the agent, the applicant, and the ward councillor. So I'll go to Councillor Guttridge as the ward councillor first of all. So when you're ready, Councillor Guttridge.
Chair, of the 3,
which one?
If you could, is there any chance of enlarging the last one on the right there? No, it's all right, Philip, thank you. Okay, ready to go. Thank you. I wish to speak against this proposed remodelling as the ward councillor. The remodelling of 208 Lutterworth Road, as you can see. Or should I say the already built extensions and upper level with roof on, bar the tiles that are in the front garden. I must draw your attention to the background of this report. And the problems that the residents and planning department have had with this application. I particularly like to just read the last part of the background, which I feel you must be quite aware of, which is December 2023, that there were health and safety concerns and issues which are still being investigated, and so no further information can be provided with an incident involving the emergency services always taking place, and they were all 3 emergency services, and the road was closed. If the committee are mindful to grant planning permission, could I please ask for, all the scheduled conditions are monitored carefully and enforced, and I would also ask for one more condition put in, that the roadside verges is back brought up to its correct standard. I also thank the officers for a very good report in a challenging circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Guttridge. Do any members have any points of clarification they'd like to seek from Councillor Guttridge? Okay, I'm not seeing any indication, so I'll move on to Mr. Robinson, who is the agent.
In the first instance, we've worked quite extensively with the planning officer, highway department, and building control to ensure that the design of the building, as it developed, was in accordance with all legislation. I believe the incident the councillor has just referred to was a medical emergency involving a workman on site. But when we were made aware of the situation prior to that, the site was cleared, Harris fencing was erected, and all safety precautions were taken, signage, etc. One of the main factors that has affected and hindered the development has been the weather. There's been a number of issues regarding the weather and how this development could progress, and the roof was taken off the bungalow in order to protect neighbouring properties from falling debris because of the fragile nature of the existing building shell. As I said, we've worked extensively with the highway department to make sure that the access is done correctly. We realise fully there's a future drop curb application to make, at which point in time we'll address the curbing. And we've worked quite hard with the screening to the side with the landscaping. And I'd like to thank the planner on this one in terms of his help and assistance. But I'd also like to say as well that my clients are local to the area and have been living in the area for 20 odd years, and they've had to move out of where they were living. The delayed development has had an impact on them, and they would obviously want to get back into the property as soon as possible. That's what I wish to say. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Have you been the agent throughout the entire length of this development, as a first question? Caution your client as to the wisdom of proceeding with development when you didn't actually have permission.
Yeah, that it is a risk until we get approval. But as I said, my client, in their defence, the building was so fragile that if they didn't proceed with taking the roof down and progressing, it was just leaking. Rainwater was coming in. It was dangerous, a danger, and that's why the storms progress was pushed forward. It wasn't deliberate to annoy the council or the planner. It was just the situation at hand. But yes, I did advise my client that it was at risk.
Any other, Councillor Green?
A statement that following on from Councillor Guttridge's comments, you do intend to return the curbside to its former glory?
Because we've had to come to the front on Lutterworth Road, there's a drop curb application that needs to be made. We've only resolved the access from Lutterworth Road. We haven't made the application for a drop curb. And at that point in time, the curbing, the grass verge will all be redone.
No? Okay, in that case, we'll go to Dr. Sharma then, who is the applicant.
Chair, I just wanted to add, as the councillor said that they had an emergency on the roof. It was a fit on one of the subcontractor employees who had it on the one of this scaffolding. And as soon as one of the site managers came to understand, the ambulance was, ordered, and the police was also followed by it. But things like this cannot be controlled. It wasn't like an incident, which was basically health and safety on the property. Now, I wanted to pitch forward that me and my wife, we both are living in Nuneaton, not far away from Lutterworth Road. We were just on the bend, on the Whitestone area for last 23 years. Me and my wife and 2 kids, we couldn't spend our Christmas our new house. As soon as we bought it, we couldn't understand that there was a leak in the kitchen, which could be demonstrated on the Lovett's website when we purchased this property. We didn't think that was a major issue. But as soon as we start exploring, we came to understand the roof was rotten. We're not from this trade. I'm an ex-British Airways pilot. My wife is a max official consultant. We asked the builders to come and tend the property. And as soon as they took the tiles off. And there we couldn't stop the rain and anything to come in, so we have to move off to the property. So make it secure, we took the property roof off, and that was the biggest mistake of ours. We can understand that, but under the given circumstances, we had tremendous rain and storms in respect of last 2-3 months. I will only request the councillor and the chair to grant us our home so that our family can live happily in the property which we adore and love. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Clarification. Councillor Hartshorn.
Thank you. Through purchasing a property, during the searches, during the surveys, were none of the structural issues raised when you were purchasing the property? Having recently moved house, that is something that was done as part of that process. So was it a case of it just wasn't done? I'm just struggling to get my head around why you moved into an unsafe property when you knew there was something wrong with it.
As a black damp on the roof, which was saying that it needs to be explored. But my wife loved the property too much, and she said, just go ahead and buy it. That's the only reason I did buy it.
Obviously, when you first purchased the property, it was a bungalow, as we see in the centre picture. It was obviously your intention to extend, develop the property from its original existence. So you put in an application, which I believe initially was single-storey extensions to side and rear. Then, for whatever reason, you decided to create a second floor and move ahead with that before you got official approval for that. Now, I understand what you're saying about the roof, but it was obviously your intention from day one, because you wouldn't have put applications in for single stories and then all of a sudden decided you want to increase it to a second story.
Our intentions were to develop the bungalow at the rear, but as soon as we took the roof off, we made the second story on the top, but it's in the same height, not more, as the bungalow height dormer was.
Right, is that to answer your question, Councillor Walsh? Yeah, there's nothing further for clarification. No. Okay, so just before we go to a vote, okay, there's been a lot of questions. There's been a lot thrown at Mr. Sharma and Dr. Sharma and Mr. Robinson. But I think we just need to sort of have a little bit of a refresher here in terms of some of the basic planning considerations that we have to consider. So I'm just going to ask our legal advisor just to make sure that we are all singing off the same hymn sheet in terms of how we've got to assess this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. Good evening, members. I just would like to address you just on the framework within which you'd be making a decision today in relation to this retrospective application. So within that context, you can't look at the fact that it's a retrospective application negatively. The circumstances that have led to it being here as a retrospective application are not really for you to consider today in relation to this application. You must be looking at the planning merits of the application that's in front of you. And I'll cast your mind back to your training. I'm sure you were told when you had your training that you have to deal with an application by reference to Section 70 of the Town and Country Planning Act, which basically says you must make a decision in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations dictate otherwise. So you have a thorough officer report that sets out the planning considerations that you're obliged to consider today. And I just wanted to remind you, the fact that it's a retrospective application is not a negative to be put in the balance when you're looking at all the various planning merits today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, I would echo that, and it's something that I know Maria's got a slight concern about as well, because I can see the line of questioning that we're going down. And yes, although none of us maybe agree with the way that this proposal's been put forward retrospectively, we cannot judge against that. I mean, I hope lessons are being learnt. So in future, if you did put another application in, that perhaps you would look at it and do it properly, because obviously that saves officer time and so on. Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, Chair, you can back me up on this. We have actually reduced the size of the extension to the right-hand side to consider the overbearing aspect. It's gone back quite a way. There was an extension that came to the front on the right-hand side. The extension on the left-hand side, that was already there. It is there in a picture of the bungalow. And the height, it's lower than you can see it in our drawing, it's lower than 210, which is the same height as the bungalow that's there. Yeah, doing it, but...
Yeah, thank you. That's duly noted. Could also make a note that in terms of, we heard there was a health and safety issue as well. So again, be careful in looking at that as well and think, is that a planning consideration as well? And also, just to note that I think building control has been actively involved in this particular case to make sure that things are being done to the correct standards as well. Okay, so just to put sort of like members' minds at ease on that one. So we have a recommendation in front of us to grant planning permission subject to the conditions as printed. So enable us to move to the discussion. Do I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Smith. Thank you, and I shall second it from the chair. Okay, so so we can enable discussion now. Any members wish to make any points? Councillor Green.
If you don't mind me bringing up at this point, although obviously it's not something we're going to materially consider it being a retrospective application, are we within our rights to ask why it's a retrospective? The reasons behind it.
Making a decision of this kind, you should be making the decision by reference to the technical data and advice within the officer report. So it's obviously a fact that it's a retrospective application, and the circumstances that have led it to be a retrospective application are obviously matters of record. But I would say to you, they're not something that you should be taking into account when you're balancing the planning considerations today. Thank you.
Councillor Shiers.
There's lots of information in here about the health and safety and also the retrospective planning application. If we're not meant to take that into account, and I understand absolutely we're not, do we need it to have it in the information, if it's because it is obviously going to cause a judgment. People are already reading that and quite naturally would make a judgment on, well, you know, you should make an application, you know, health and safety has to be followed. Do we need all that in? And it put in such a way of, you know, we can't give you any more detail because it's being looked into. It kind of makes it sound a little bit more dramatic than potentially it already is.
Valid point, Councillor. I think the reality is, I mean, when you're in a planning committee, obviously everything has to be done in a manner that's transparent. So, whilst, you know, like I say, this is a fact. These are facts that you're being told that it's a retrospective application. So, I don't think it would assist matters if that was not out there in the public. But I think fundamentally, like I said, when you're looking at how to determine this application today, it really is just looking at those technical planning matters, and as you would with any other application, balancing, you know, is there a policy breach, you know, does it accord with consultation responses, or can it, or are there conditions that can bring it into compliance if it currently doesn't. So yes, it's a valid point, but it's a transparent decision-making process, planning, so we have to be clear about some of the background, but it's not helpful to dwell too much on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, our planning officers do an amazing job here in terms of the quality of the reports that we actually get. I think we are, in some respects, slightly spoilt in that regard because they do give us as much information, sometimes possibly too much information. But I think they would be remiss not to mention things. But then it's up to us as it's sort of kind of almost the wheat from the chaff in terms of what are the nuggets that we really need to get out of this. You know, what are the material planning considerations? I appreciate that can be slightly difficult sometimes, and I appreciate there is also a human side to this, I think, because as well as the technical side, which we're told to, you know, we are human beings, and so we do look at the human aspects. But I think, as Jazz already alluded, we need to think about the training that we received on this, and we need to look at it on the merits of, you know, the system. Okay, and does it meet the criteria as required by that, or does it fall short of that criteria? So that's what we have to look at. So, you know, sort of say, please be mindful of that as we sort of have any sort of like questions or as you make your decisions, please. So I shall ask, are there any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Shires.
And all that, yeah, I kind of get all that. And from what I've gathered today, that the reason that the planning permission wasn't put in initially for the second story or the first story was because the roof had to be taken off for health and safety. So it was a split decision, is a quick decision. Planning happy with that? That was kind of it had to be made and then the decision put in after, rather than, all right, I'm going to build me a house and then kind of, it was more of a, I have to do this.
As the chair and legal representative has said, we have to assess any application, whether it's retrospective or not, on the development plan and any other material planning considerations. Obviously in the report it's there as background, but what we need to concentrate on is actually the appraisal part of the report, which sets out what we can consider as material planning considerations. Obviously we're assessing this application as a two-storey application because that's the plans that we've got in front of us this evening.
Any further questions, Councillor Shires? Councillor Hartsell.
So I think the applicant and the agent understand our disappointment that it is a retrospective application, but I think for the purposes of us actually evaluating it, we need to basically take the retrospective part of it out and look at it as if it is an application that has been submitted, nothing's been done yet, and we can say, yes, those are the plans, they look good to us, bad to us, you know, these are the suggestions that we have, questions. If I was to look at it as, if I'm looking at it as if it's a application for a building that hasn't been done yet, it looks fantastic. It looks a really good, well-designed building. I've looked at the interior parts, lovely layout. I can fully support it. Obviously, I'm not happy that it's retrospective, but in the objective view of that application, I will support it.
Councillor Brown.
Looking at the application in precisely the terms that Councillor Hartshorn's already mentioned, as if this was an application that had come in on plan. And having visited the site, I fully understand that we say there's no impact on 206, but when you look at the development as it's built next to the bungalow next door, it is out of proportion to what's next door to it on that side. It's not really out of proportion as against the semi-detached properties on the other side. And it's a mix of developed properties in that road. But it is definitely out of proportion to the neighbours. And I really feel for the people who live in the adjoining property that is still kept as a bungalow with dormer windows. And I accept that the properties on either side have been altered in perhaps a manner that's more sympathetic to the existing buildings than what we now have in front of us. Nonetheless, I would suggest that provided the additional condition that Councillor Guttridge asked for in respect of the verge and things at the front, then I think we have no alternative here. However, we view the background to the application, but to go ahead and put it through. Thank you.
The verge part of it, that will be a separate application, Councillor Brown. That's not going to be covered by the existing application.
I only mentioned it because the applicant's agent said they were willing to do it.
The land you're referring to is actually highway land. All we can do at this stage is really put an informative on. We can't put any condition on it because it just wouldn't meet with all the requirements. So we will put an informative on though, Councillor.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, the same. All I'll say is we have members, and certainly Councillor Guttridge will drive past that site every day, and I'm sure if the verges aren't up to scratch, he can go directly to Highways and ask them to sort it out. It's not for this committee to deal with that. In terms of all the discussion that's gone on, I'll just say one thing again, that the members must bear in mind that officers have spent an extraordinary amount of time looking at this, making sure it's policy compliant. If you read this, you'll see it is policy compliant. And the fact we disagree with Highways, for instance, will have no effect whatsoever if Highways haven't objected. We need to bear in mind that if we refuse things that are policy compliant, we will lose them at appeal, inevitably where they'll go. So just a word to the committee to, wind back, think about your training, and the fact that if it's policy compliant, very often all we can do is add conditions in, little conditions. We can't refuse it on that basis, because if we do, we're in dodgy ground, and if we lose appeals often enough, we will lose the right to actually decide on these applications. So just a word of warning. Fortunately, we've got training coming up again soon after the elections, so it'll be a refresher for everyone who's still here.
Listened interestingly to all the comments, and I do respect all the planning officers' comments. However, we are the planning committee, and I think we are in the right to discuss these matters. If it's a retrospective, that is what we're here for, and that's what our residents expect us to do. So I make no apologies for that whatsoever.
Speakers wishing to, or people indicating to speak, so I'll move straight to the vote. So all those in favour of recommending that we grant planning permission? Okay, against? Abstentions? Okay, 1 abstention. So that is passed. Thank you. There is no other business for this evening, so I shall now draw this meeting to a close and thank everyone who has attended. Thank you.